Morning everyone.
Good morning.
We're actually at Rathtrevor Beach in Parksville once again. We were over, for those of you who watched our channel, you know I visit my sister who lives here on occasion. And so we stayed at Rathtrevor last night. It's November 10th. Yeah, we came in, it's typical fall weather for British Columbia. We came in on the ferry yesterday, rainy, socked in, really not much to see. Visited my sister for lunch and then we popped into Rathtrevor. Lots of good spots left open. It's winter season, so rates are $13 a night, which is pretty good. We got a spot literally just on the other side of the trees here, which is right beside the beach that we're on. Very mild last night, maybe down to 9 degrees. We were just laughing because we made some tea and coffee in our to-go cups, and Mickey was complaining because it was a little too warm actually as we were walking along. So it's kind of nice. It's not a bad day. You can see a little bit more visibility than we had yesterday when we came in, but still cloudy. So we're hoping this afternoon we'll get a little bit sunny and then we'll head back to Vancouver later in the day.
So first of all, we just want to thank all of you after our video last time when Gordon told you about what happened with Precious, and we lost our lovely little cat, and we just want to thank you all so much for your outpouring of support and your stories about your own pets, and it's all of your kind words of sympathy and condolence really mean a lot to us. And
yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So while we're here, we thought we'd also do just a short update on what we do when we get ready to go winter camping. Now, I know for many of you, 9 degrees and mild like this is not really winter, but just give you a short list of things that we do when we go winter camping. Alright, so, by the way, one of the things you'll see in some of our video from today are rabbits. Lots of wild rabbits here at Rathtrevor, and it's kind of fun to see them in the morning and the evening. So when we winterize our van, or before we prepare to use our van in the winter, because we will use it throughout the winter, whether it's mild like it is right now, whether we have snow and it's below freezing. First thing, of course, is simply winterizing, and that's getting rid of all of the water in the van and replacing it with the pink Food Save antifreeze. We've got a couple of videos where we've shown examples of that. The other key thing, at least in our van, is to put in some additional insulation. So that's primarily in the windows and on the doors. So on the rear door we hang a blanket just between basically the roof and the floor. Just helps cut down any kind of draft that might come in from the back window. On the side van door we also hang, actually I think it's an IKEA shower curtain, and we do that. We have one on the side door and then one between the cab typically and the rest of the van, and that just we've got some Velcro attached to a shower curtain for that one, and it just keeps the living area a little smaller, less drafts, and it just makes it that much easier for our furnace to keep the van fairly warm. The other thing on the windows is we do put insulation in the windows. Typically we use Reflectix, or in some cases we might use Reflectix you can buy at any hardware store, and in some cases we might use those little backpacker pads, those blue foam pads. We've cut some of those for a couple of our windows, and the only reason we use those is it's slightly warmer than using the Reflectix. And that does make a significant difference. It's not huge because neither of those have really high insulation factors, but it certainly does help keep the van a little cozy and makes it comfortable enough when we're camping in the winter months.
We do get a lot of condensation. It's kind of like when you're sleeping in a tent. We wake up in the morning and there's quite a bit of condensation in the windows, and we don't want to have too much moisture in the van, so we sometimes crack the window just a little bit. Even though it seems to defeat the purpose, it does help. Last
evening we've used those little black vents that fit in the cab window, and the nice thing about those is if it does rain, they're covered and nothing will get in, and it seemed to work fairly well. We had little in the way of any kind of condensation this morning, which is great. But yeah, it's always a good idea to leave something open a little bit so that it helps reduce that. If you're using your propane furnace, it will generally create more condensation. If we're somewhere where we're plugged in and we're using our electric heater, then it's usually much less. I guess it's just the dry heat from the electric heater, and that works well.
I think a lot of people are really curious about when you're winterized, how to use the washroom.
Actually, we don't go to the washroom at all during the winter.
So typically, well, obviously we can't shower because we don't have any fresh water in the tanks. So, we'll try to find campgrounds where they have shower facilities if we're going for a long trip. Although typically in the winter we don't really go for very long.
We're usually just out for a couple of days max.
Yeah, but generally we do try to use the facilities that's available, that's outside the van. So in campgrounds they have pit toilets usually, so we can go and use that so that we don't try to fill up our black tank too much. But if we absolutely need to go like in the middle of the night and you don't want to go outside in the cold, then you can just use the pink antifreeze. So we keep a big bottle of antifreeze in the washroom, and we go and then we'll probably fill up maybe half a cup to a cup of antifreeze in the toilet. And of course we don't turn on the water pump, obviously, because there's no water. So you just use your foot pedal and just flush it down.
Flush.
Yeah, and because we have enough antifreeze in there, our waste doesn't freeze.
And the other thing too is just to note, one of the challenges and why we try and avoid using our toilet during the winter is just that it's hard to find places to actually dump the tank because a lot of the normal dump stations are closed during the winter. So again, you want to minimize, or at least we want to minimize its usage.
And we're actually lucky over here on the west coast because it never gets really that cold. So a lot of the campgrounds, or the private campgrounds, because a lot of the provincial ones are already closed for the winter, but a lot of the private campgrounds will have all their pipes and everything insulated. So you are able to find a few dump stations that you can dump your tanks, but I guess if you're back east, you've got snow on the ground, you probably have more of a
little tougher.
Yeah, so a lot of people do come over here to snowbird on the west coast because it's so much milder than the rest of the country. So that was the black tank, and now we can talk about the gray tank. And obviously we don't want to fill up our gray tank at all. If we get a little bit of water in there, again, if we need to brush our teeth or something, then we can run a bit of antifreeze down. But we try to avoid using it as much as possible. And so what we do is we bring, very important, a big bottle of water, and that's our drinking
4 liters
water,
or a gallon.
our washing water. And what we do is try to avoid any kind of food that requires a lot of wastewater that's produced. For example, if you're making pasta, you have to boil a lot of water, and then you have to throw that gray water out somewhere. And it's not very environmentally conscious to just dump that gray water just anywhere. So what we try to do is make like rice or something that doesn't require a lot of water to cook in. And try to keep things really simple. Like for instance, for this morning we have little containers of instant oatmeal, and we just pour water in it and let it sit for a while, and then you can just have your breakfast. So you just keep it really simple. If you're preparing vegetables and fruits and things like that, try to minimize the things that need a lot of washing. And if you do need to wash things, then either wash everything at home, or if you're at a campground and they have sink or kitchen facilities available, then you can obviously use their facilities to wash your vegetables and fruits and things like that. So just keeping things simple is really the best way to go when you want to cook in your van. And when we do wash dishes, obviously we can't use the gray tank again. So
or our water pump or anything.
Yeah. So one of the methods that we learned actually watching other RVers on the internet, on YouTube, is have two spray bottles. And one of the spray bottles will contain a mixture of water and dish detergent. And then the other one has just plain water. And so what you can do is, after you've eaten and you have your dirty plates and pots and pans, you can wipe as much of the food particles off of those items and throw it away. And then you can use like a paper towel, for example, and spray the soapy water, and then rub it and throw that away. And then for the rinsing part, you can again soak up a lot of the paper towel with fresh water, and then wipe that out. And generally it cleans things fairly well. Now if you want to, every once in a while, if you can go home or go to a campground facility and just wash everything really nicely every once in a while, it's fine. But if you're only doing that for a few days, then it's perfectly fine, and it keeps things clean. And if you're worried, you can always use a little bit of boiled water to just sanitize everything. And we haven't gotten sick or anything while we're winter camping, so
it actually works fairly well. If we do have a little bit of leftover gray water, we have a container, it's kind of like a great big green thermos, and we put that water in there, and then when we have a chance, we either take it home and we dump it at home, or if we're in a park where it has a gray water facility, we simply dump it there. So it works fairly easily.
But typically we try not to have any gray water that we have to actually carry around and dispose of. And another tip that, a very important one actually, is if you're storing your RV somewhere and it's going to go below freezing, you want to make sure you don't have any kind of bottles of water or liquids that's stored inside your van, because it could, it could freeze and then sort of explode, and then if it melts, you've got water all over the place. So one of our very important tips is when you're leaving your RV for storage, make sure you take any water bottles, anything that contains liquids that might freeze, beer or something like that. Just make sure that you check your RV very carefully before you leave, and take all of those things out of there.
I don't think we've ever left full beer in our van. I don't know why. But we have had cases where we've had to go back and grab that water bottle. Because we just, as Mickey said, you just don't want it to freeze up and then break and melt and have all those other issues that could result. So.
Yeah, so put that on your checklist of when you're leaving the van for storage.
So hopefully that's helpful. It's not an extensive list, but it's some of the key things that we look at. We do use our van all year, not as often as we do in the summer. And one other thing we do, if we're not actually using the van for an extended period of time, we try and go over, we have ours in a storage lot, and we either run the motor for 15-20 minutes, but typically what we'll do is take it out for, say, a 30-minute drive and just use everything. So we'll turn on the batteries and we'll turn on the the lights, just to make sure everything works for that few minutes in a week, and then it just keeps everything ready for when we do head out for a longer weekend.
We hope you found all those tips useful, and if there's any other great tips that you might have when you go winter camping, please don't hesitate to leave that in the comments below. I'm sure it'll be really helpful for other people as well.
Yeah, so thank you very much for watching this video, and we won't be posting as often as we typically would do in the summer, but we will get out still over the winter. I'm sure we'll be out in winter where it's actually some snow on the ground, but not too much here on the west coast.
So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Until next time.